So what we're going to do, I'm going to just use, I'm actually going to turn this to the side. I'm going to use my grid paper, but I'm going to use some stuff that's kind of been used because we're going to be doing the watercoloring and just to kind of get at what we want to do. So I'm not using any of my stamp sets yet. I'm going to keep these on the side. I do have all of my brushes ready. And I have my sketch idea. And I need one more thing. I need a towel. Okay, so this is a pretty simple, hopefully, background. The probably most complicated part is we're going to have to choose a couple colors. So let me get these out. And we're going to try to pick 4 colors. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully that's going to work. So I have both sets of watercolor pencils. So there's a set 1 and a set 2. Oh, excuse me. You can find both of these in the current catalog. Actually, they both will be carrying over. So we're definitely not going to need black or white. So I'm going to take out black, white, brown, Cajun. Although you probably could do these, but these wouldn't be the colors I would choose. So I'm going to take out the darker colors and gray. And I'm going to just put these back for now. So we have a little bit less things to choose from. So I think a nice color combination would be Gorgeous Grape. If I want Bermuda or Coastal. Which these kind of look opposite, don't they? Seem like they should be opposite. I'm going to keep both of those just in case. Flirty Flamingo will be pretty. And I'm going to do Pacific Point just because I'm not sure which of these I want to use. So I'm only going to use 4 for right now. All right, so let's see. We're going to kind of go with like a lighter to darker kind of theme. Let's go with that here. I'm going to go with Cabana. All right, so this is fairly simple. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our watercolor pencil. Hopefully this is going to work. I've not tried this. I just saw some ideas and thought it would be really cute. And we're just going to kind of scribble on some color. So again, Flirty Flamingo was number 1. Coastal Cabana. I'm going to go down a little bit more with this one. Go down a little bit more here too. And because I think what I'm going to try to do, I'm still not 100%, and then Gorgeous Grape, is I want them to potentially bleed into each other a little bit. So let's see. All right. Hopefully this is going to work. So I have my 4 colors. And I'm going to do the broader brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my little tea towel here and just get it wet. So it's nice, not soaking wet, but just so the bristles are a little bit smooth. There we go. So it's kind of like a nice flat pattern. So I'm just going to make sure it's nice and wet. All right, and then I'm going to start at the top. I'm just kind of trying. I don't know if this is going to work. So that's why I say we're going to try. Worst case scenario. We have to do it again, but we'll see. You know, I'm famous for doing as I go here. All right, so that was the Coastal Cabana. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go back a little bit. Kind of merge these two together just a teeny bit. And I'm going to go down to the Pacific Point is pretty. And I'm not squeezing the water while I do this. I'm just, it's wet and then I'm kind of just moving it back and forth. And then I'm going to go back up here a little bit into the Coastal Cabana just to kind of blend those two together a little bit. Okay, and then same down here with the Gorgeous Grape. Nope, I gotta wet this a little bit more. Because I want it to be a little bit fluidy. blend these two together just a little bit. And then kind of fade this one out. I'm going to do the same up here with the pink. But what I think I'm going to have to do is to put a little bit more here. So I'm actually going to turn this around. Not sure how dry it's going to be. I'm going to bring just a little bit. All right. Woo! Whoops. You could also, if you don't like doing this the squeezy way, you could also dip your brush into just a clean cup of water. That's another option. Same thing. I'm just going to bring this out a little bit more. Okay. So that's going to kind of be it. So I'm going to set this on the side. Let me just rinse this just a little. Okay. And so you can see kind of what it looks like. So then, pardon me for a moment, but I'm going to hit this with my heat tool to dry it. Also, you will get a totally different look with this paper, especially this specific paper, depending on which side you use. This side is much smoother, so if you use the smoother side, you'll get a different look. And I can see I crossed over a little bit here. All right. Now, one other thing you can do, I usually have a paper towel up here. I think I might have used it, so I might have to improvise. So the other thing I'm going to do, so this is 100% dry. Okay, it's definitely dry now. So I have my other one that has the broader tip. I'm going to squeeze this a little bit just to make sure it's wet. Okay, so it's definitely running wet. And then what I'm going to do, where is my... This would definitely work better with a paper towel. I just don't have one handy. So what you could do is you're going to just kind of make this so it drips. And then you're going to splotch drops. Okay, that's enough. And then I'm going to take, it works nicer with the paper towel, I say, because it'll pick the ink up directly and it'll give you more of a circular drop instead of the texture of this cloth specifically. Okay, so then I'm going to do this one more time. Heat tool again, just to dry it. So it's kind of hard to see because I can see it, but I know it's not going to show up. But there's lighter, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's some lighter splotches where that water was. And I'm going to tell you what, it has a yellow tint to it, probably because whatever I cleaned it with wasn't 100% clean, which is just me being silly. But anyway, so there is this part. So again, we are definitely dry. One thing about watercolor paper, it does get a little bit bent when you heat it. So you want to make sure that you use a really good adhesive. So what I probably will do is to put some heavy duty, and I don't have any tape runner up here, so I'll probably use some tear and tape and then some liquid glue just to make sure it really, really sticks down. But before we get into that part, the other thing you can do, now this may look a little weird with what I was planning on doing with the trees. So instead of using the trees, I'm actually going to use a stamp for this one. So I'm going to take my Queen Anne's lace and I'm actually going to get out my Stamparatus. And let me just pull this extra plate. So I'm going to get this out and put this, let's see, I'm going to go with, just going to sit this here for a moment because I want to see where I'm going to do it. I feel like the way I did these, I might have maybe arranged my colors a little bit differently, but this is kind of just like, I will say, so you can kind of get the gist of what we're doing with this, because you could do this with absolutely any colors or color scheme you wanted to. And once again, one other thing I'm going to do, so I'm just going to close my door to pick up the Stamparatus, or pick up the stamp with the Stamparatus. And this is just dependent on what you want to do. I want a really, really black. So I'm going to use the VersaFine, which is a pigment ink. If you wanted to, you could use Memento. That was very inked. If you have a different black that you really like, I really like this because it's really also super great for details. Just slide this over just a little. It's really, really great for details. Okay, and the other reason I'm using the Stamparatus is just in case I end up goofing something up, I can fix it. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to press. Okay, so that's one. I'm going to do one more inking. And anybody that just hopped on, thank you so much for joining me. By the way, I did have some major technical difficulties. I think Facebook was being a little crazy last week because I did intend to go live on here on Thursday. And about 5 minutes after I sent you the notice like, hey, I'll be live in 15 minutes, I couldn't get on Facebook anymore, which was a little bit of a problem. So anyway, this, the one thing about this ink though, the VersaFine ink, is it is a pigment ink, so it does stay wet. So I'm actually going to just dry this. This also is a great one to use with embossing powder because it is a pigment ink, so it stays wet longer. So I'm just going to hit this just to dry it. I'm going to flip it over just a little bit to see if I can straighten it out just a smidge. All right, and then one more. And I know this probably seems counterproductive because I just did that and then I'm going to go back and do something again. But I wanted to make sure it was dry before I added the sentiment so I didn't smudge it, essentially. So I'm going to just use this just to get off a little bit of this excess. So when I flip it, I don't have any problems. But the nice part about this is if you wanted to do a lot of these cards and you had this lined up how you wanted, you could just do them over and over. So I'm going to flip this over. And then I'm going to grab a sentiment. I really love the sentiments. I love the font in this because it does look handwritten. So I'm going to do Hello Friend. And I think I'm going to just put it, I don't know if I want to do it here or up in the top. I think I kind of like down at the bottom here. So I'm just going to go down here, just kind of looking at my grid lines slightly to see if it's lined up. And I'm going to use the same thing again, the VersaFine. Okay. And just give that a press. Oh, missed a little spot. I think I need a little bit more ink. I don't think I inked that very well. Okay. Oh, much better. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Okay, there it is. Let me wipe this little smudge off before that goes somewhere it's not supposed to. All right, so I'm just going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to dry this off. Let me put this one back here so I don't have a magnet issue. So let me just dry this. Again, if you wanted to, now be the perfect time to add some embossing powder. You could add clear, because clear will make pretty much any color that you want. And it's just a really simple, crisp black. And then you have the stark contrast and then just a little bit of color. I really like it. And you could even do this with one color. I mean, being honest, you certainly could. One other thing you could do, and I know this was on the clearance rack, so I'm going to show you because I am fairly certain it was still in there the other day. But if you have some of this copper, what is this called? Shimmer paint. I'll show you something else you can do. And I'm going to use one of my older aqua painters for this. And just make sure this has something in it. Yep, okay. So I'm going to shake this up really well. Hopefully I don't mess this up. Let's see. Remember the other day when I did that pre-recorded video, and that turned out to be a stinkeroo, to put it nicely. Oh, what do I want? You know what I want? I want something that I don't see. I'm going to use this for now. I'm just going to grab a lid to one of my embellishment containers, and I'll just wipe this out when I'm done. So I'm just going to put a little, more than one drop, a little drop or two of that was the copper, which again, I believe that was on the clearance rack, but maybe you still have yours. And then I'm going to put a little bit of alcohol. This just happened to have alcohol in it instead of water. Let's see what this looks like before we do it on our card. Okay, that looks pretty good. That's what I was hoping for. Dry that. So I'm just going to take my aqua painter. Probably should have put on a bib when I did this, considering I'm wearing a new shirt. All right, and I'm just going to rinse this out. And the reason I used the old one is because I have never done this before, so I wasn't sure if the glitter or the shimmer would get stuck, but it does seem to be cleaning out pretty well. I'm sure if I ran it under the sink too, we wouldn't have any problems at all. Now, I'm going to leave this on the side just in case I decide to do something else with it. So we have a little splattery, and here's where I dropped that little drop of alcohol. So this is going to definitely need to set and dry, and then we'll put this together. So I'm going to move that one for now. So the other card, the other idea I had, and this one's going to require a little bit more of a soft look to it, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take my same brush that has water in it still, and I'm just going to I'm not really making it super wet, but I'm just kind of wetting the front. Okay, so that's wet, and I'm hoping this is going to work out the way I want. I do have my other brush here. This is the little bit thicker brush because that's the one I think that would do a better job. I'm going to keep this one here just in case. And then I'm going to pick just a little bit different of a color scheme. So I'm going to do Bermuda Bay and Night of Navy. That'll be another good one. Balmy Blue. That might be okay. All right, so I'm going to try this again. I'm not 100% sure how it is or isn't going to turn out. So I'm just going to do one little thing real quick because I want to see how these look color-wise. So Bermuda Bay, Navy, Balmy. So I'm pretty sure, I think this one's going to be, even though this is going more of a green, let me see what this one looks like. How about this? Pacific Point. I kind of want to stay more so in the same color. So I'm actually going to take out the green. I'm going to do this. So I have Pacific Point, Balmy, and then Night of Navy. So Pacific, no, that's Balmy, Pacific, Night of Navy. It almost looks like Night of Navy is a little bit more purpley, but we're going to go with it this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to do this with a really soft tip. So I'm just going to kind of bring, I don't want to say I'm going in a pattern, but I'm kind of trying to be slightly abstract with it. So that was Pacific Point. Now this is Balmy Blue. And then finally, Night of Navy. Okay. I'm going to bring a little bit of Night of Navy up. All right. And I started with Pacific Point. All right, so we're going to see if this works. So I have my kind of 3 colors and a little teeny smudge here. So my brush is wet, so I'm just going to do the same thing again. I want to try to make this a little bit more wet as I go. So I am going to give this a squeeze kind of while I'm over the paper. And I'm just kind of softly blending these. So again, watercolor paper can definitely take some water, but it will warp less if you actually tape this down to a board. And this isn't quite what I was going for because it's not quite dark enough. This part up here looks really good because it took the water and the paint and the paper went really well together. This one's still just a teeny bit liney. So I'm going to see if I can bring a little bit more in, just in a couple spots. So you can tell where it's wet because it's kind of activating the watercolor pencil, which you can use the pencil that way directly as well. I'm trying to kind of blend it out a little bit, and it may or may not blend quite as well. So again, this is not Stampin' Up's watercolor paper, so it may react a little bit differently. But I do really like this paper. It's just a different one I started with. So it's not quite as dark as I want. But one other thing I wanted to tell you, just as a side, this isn't really going as the way I wanted to. So I'm actually going to try something different for this. But the other thing I wanted to tell you is, if you want to just color with these, you can actually just get them wet. So for example, let me grab another lid here. If you have a lid and you just squeeze, this is blue, see if I can get this to be clear. If you just squeeze some water into, this is just another embellishment lid. If you squeeze some water, you can actually just dip the tip of your watercolor pencil in, and it really makes it's a much deeper hue, but you can, and you obviously it dries up quickly because it kind of just sticks to the edge, but it really does change the texture and the hue of the watercolor pencil. So that's another way you can use it too. Let me try one other thing. I'm going to bring out, this was just that broader tip. Let's see if this blends it just a little bit more. It could have just been the brush I was using as well. And we certainly could add some more water to this. And typically that will help the ink move a little bit better, but also we're using a watercolor pencil and not really a water paint, so it is going to react a teeny bit differently. But I'm going to do the same thing. So that was Night of Navy. So I'm going to go up here. I'm just going to turn this around, and I'm going to do the same thing and just wet my pencil. I'm trying to not really be super precise when I do this, because watercolor usually doesn't have much preciseness to it. Okay, so that was Balmy Blue. And then I'm going to do the same thing, just going in with that wet brush, kind of spreading this out. One thing about this though is, the other thing with watercolor paper specifically is, you could let this dry. It is going to look different, and you can actually go back and layer on top of it as well once it's dry. You do have to kind of wait for it to dry a little bit. So this might end up being pretty, but it does change also if you're doing it from drying it with a heat tool versus letting it dry naturally. It will completely change. So finally I'm going to go with Pacific Point. So again, I'm just wetting the tip, and I kind of like the way this little shape is up here, so I'm going to try and follow it a little bit. And I'm being, you can see, really loose, kind of almost like a shaking motion. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Might as well, I'm just working it until it's kind of dry. Okay, so finally, once again with my brush, so it's not any more wet. I'm not actively squeezing it now. I'm just kind of spreading whatever water is around. I'll bring a little bit down here. What was that? Nope, that's the wrong one. I want to bring just a little bit more, just so I can blend these two together. There we go. So once this dries, it definitely will look different, but I'm going to heat set it just to get it dry just a little bit. I'm going to keep this here just in case I need a little bit more water. Hey everybody that's joining. One other thing, and I just want to turn this off so you can actually see what I'm talking about, but this little drop here, So you can actually blow your heat tool so it will make the drip more or make the drip go in, but it's kind of neat when you have a lot of water, you can actually move the color around and move the water around to make the drip do what you want, kind of. If I know that sounds a little weird, but it does actually move. It will make the water move, which is kind of a cool effect as well. So I'm going to just heat this. I'm just going to keep it moving to dry the whole thing. And then once I get rid of that drip there, I'll actually flip it over a little bit. But when you do this, you can see the water kind of dancing back and forth until it dries, which is kind of cool. And I know we have those jaggedy edges where I added the color. And you may or may not like that. I mean, that's totally just in the, I don't want to say eye of the beholder, but sometimes when you look at watercolor and then you finish looking at it when it's actually dry, it really does have a different look. And it can kind of end up being nice to look at, even though when you looked at it, you were kind of like, ooh, that looks just crazy. So also the way I started this was here, but I may end up doing this as a side stamp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, I kind of want to do the trees for this one, but I also want to kind of show you the other idea I had with doing a tree, like a different tree. So I think I'm actually going to do it this way, and I'm going to do my best not to botch it up because I don't want to use the Stamparatus because I want to do more than one with this tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Versamark. I'm going to move these over, or VersaFine, I should say. This is a really, in case you're just coming in, this is not a Stampin' Up die. It's the same company that makes Memento and VersaFine or Versamark. So I'm just going to stamp this off, kind of like it's a branch. Same thing. And you know what I want? I want a little piece of paper so I can kind of mask this. So it has more than one. I know there's a teeny gap here, but we'll work on fixing that. I'm going to do one more. What do I want to do? Let me grab that little one. There's also a very small branch. Well, this will fit right on here perfectly. All right. Oh, and you know what? I can probably fill in that little gap there. Let me just ink this off so it's not. Okay. I'm going to just take a teeny little bit right here. I'm going to see if I can match. Look at that. I just stamped that in there backwards and it kind of almost matched perfectly. So same thing with this stamp. If you kind of want more of a trunk, I'm going to end up going like this. I'm just going to clean off this part. And of course, of all the things, yesterday, as I said, I was trying to finish. I just got my catalogs and the paper and I made a bookmark to put in the catalog. So all of my stamp cleaning apparatus are downstairs. So I'm going to do this. That looks pretty good. So I flipped this over and I'm just inking the stem, which is going to kind of be our trunk. And I know there's a little shadow down here, but we're going to cover that up. So let's do that once more. So it kind of looks like, now I want to add in one more little part of the tree just so it kind of looks slightly more realistic. And we can probably, that's going to be a little bit too small. We're going to do it with this. Let's see. Kind of looks slightly like a little bit of a fuller tree there. Not everybody may like this tree, and I can understand that because it's a little kind of a DIY tree. I'm going to do the same thing, back this in one more time, just to kind of fill that in. And maybe one more little branch off of here. Do a teeny little bit here. There we go. I'm going to leave it because I feel like I'm going to do too much. So maybe this might look like kind of like a Halloween tree to you, but to me, I kind of feel like winter. And one other thing, you could definitely go in with this and make this trunk larger if you wanted to re-stamp your base again. You could certainly find a bigger trunk to use. I'm sure we have plenty, but this is just one that kind of I thought of. Would be kind of easy. Oops, that's a little too far reach. Hold on. And once, I'm just trying to be careful not to touch it because if I do, it's going to smudge. Oops, that's too far. Once I get this done, I will heat set it. Quite honestly, you probably really won't notice too much of the trunk unless you were here when we made this card. Okay, got a little scribbly there. Probably should have left it thin, but you know me, can't leave well enough alone. So I'm going to heat set this to dry it. I think I'm going to have to add another little branch over here now. Worst case scenario, I can always trim it off too. Just trim off part of that tree there. Okay, let me see. I think I'm going to do... yeah, I'm going to do a little something up here. All right, we'll see. We might have to do a little tree trimming. All right, so the one thing about My Meadow, none of those have any sentiments. It's all a sentiment-less stamp set. So I'm going to do a larger sentiment on this side. And whoops, I just moved my stamp set. Hold on. I was trying to let this dry. And this one has one that says, I know you have the strength to get through this. And you know what? I know the perfect person. See, that's sometimes what happens when you make a card. You know the perfect person to send this to. I have a friend who could probably really use a card to cheer him up right now. He is having a super rough time with a recovery from a surgery. And you know what? I might end up putting this on. I'm going to do this on the Stamparatus because I want to make sure it's straight. So let me take this back out and grab a different plate. And I'm going to pop this back in the corner, just like so. And I kind of feel like I should offset it this way a little bit. I don't know if that's a great idea or not, but I think that's what I'm going to do. All right. So the one thing I kind of wanted to do didn't really turn out, I guess, as well as I wanted to, but we'll still see. We'll see what this card looks like. And he might get this card and be like, what the heck was Rachel? Why did she send me this card? But hopefully it will make him slightly happy. All right, I'm going to ink this one more time just because I want it to be nice and dark as I'm inking on top of markers. I want it to be nice and dark, kind of like the tree. Oh, that looks really good. Okay, let me just move this, and I just want to do the same thing and heat set that. And then we can put these couple cards together. Okay, so same thing again. I don't really know how the copper would look with this. Copper does look really pretty with this, but it might give a little, just like a little something to kind of spice this up a little bit. So since I already have it, I'm going to use it. So I'm just going to take this is again alcohol with this. You can tell it's a teeny bit separated, but that's okay. So I'm just going to, whoop, that was not the way I wanted it to go. Okay, so there's that. And then just at the chance of not tempting fate, because I feel like something here is going to get spilled, I'm going to go ahead and just soak the rest of this up with my cloth. And then I can put the lid. So that just cleaned out just like that. It probably has a teeny bit of a tinge, but nothing that's going to ruin anything. So I'm just going to put the lid back on that. I have a little bit of splatter here where my ink is. So I'm going to just try to touch it just to pick it up, because that was just a couple of alcohol. It was a blob right there, of course, by my words. So I'm going to hit this once more just to dry this. The other one is dry. And since I did mix this with alcohol, it's not going to stay wet super long. But this one is definitely 100% dry. And since this one is pretty dry, I'm going to flip it to try to even it out just a little bit. And one other thing you could do, if this really, really bothers you, is you could run this through your die cutting machine in between a piece of printer paper, and it will flatten it out just a little bit. So that's something else you could do. Just kind of depends. But again, if you wanted to, you could tape this down, which will kind of avoid some of the heartache that you would be dealing with the crinkly paper. All right, let me move this over. So I'm going to do both of these on black, because I kind of thought it really will make them stand out. Oh, look at that. I just happen to have two pieces already cut. Only thing I have to do is score them. So we'll just put this on, and then we will need a piece of white, obviously, for the inside. So there's one. And I'm going to look at this one before I mount it, because if it really, the tree is looking really goofy, I might end up trimming it down a little bit. So I'm going to mount that one second. So this is our first. And I do apologize. I know everything's in here a little helter-skelter, but only because I was trying to work with the paper this way. So here is our card. So you can see the nice part about that shimmer paint is it does have a nice reflective quality to it, which is really cool. So what I'm going to do, I don't think I have any, I think I might have some, oh, you know what I still have some fast fuse, so I might as well get rid of that while I'm here. So I'm going to use some of that. Gosh, I haven't used this forever. I am almost out of it. Oops. Oh, that didn't even stick. Sometimes it doesn't stick to the foil or the more toothy paper, which is why it's probably not anybody's adhesive of choice anymore. So I'm going to take and put this down, trying to make sure it's pretty centered before I press. Okay, so that actually stuck on there really well. So it is pretty flat. It might have a little bit of a curve to it, but so there's one. And I really think the black stamping and the black border makes it look super pretty. So there's one, and I want to see what this looks like. So if we go like this, I'm just trying to decide if I need to trim that tree or just leave it. No, I think I'm going to leave it. I think it's going to be okay. So let's see if I can get enough out of this. Oh, nope. That one's gone. It's not liking this watercolor paper. That's the thing. All right, so let's go with that. I have a little bit, and I'm going to do a little bit of liquid glue. I do want to make sure I get the edge of this, specifically because we heated it and everything else. So you want to make sure you get the edges really good with no matter what tape you're using or liquid adhesive. That way it really, really sticks. So I'm going to set this here. We kind of have best of both worlds going here, because we do have some fast fuse and then we do have some of the liquid glue. Let's make sure I don't have any on my hands. Just going to give this a second. Now, one other thing, since this is fully dry and mounted on here, and if it is still a little bit wonky, you can even run this whole card through with just a piece of printer paper on top of it. But there is that. And then here's the other one. So the one idea I had really didn't technically come to fruition yet, only because what I wanted to do with it with the watercolor pencils didn't exactly work out. However, you probably could also try it with using the ink refills and either put a little drop into the lid of the ink, or if you wanted to, and I'm going to just show you what I mean, just on this little scrap here. So what you could do is, I'm going to use this little bit smoother side. So I'm just going to use Bermuda Bay. So you could squeeze so you have a little pool. And I'm going to wet this. So it's nice and wet. I'm going to try to give it kind of like a ethereal kind of shape. So I'm taking the broader brush, making sure it's nice and wet. I'm going to put some water in here. So you can see, because you don't want it super dark. You want it kind of liquidy. And then when you take it to the paper, if you just touch it, you can see it'll spread, it's called blooming. So the ink will kind of bloom on the paper. And then if you want to get a little bit darker, same thing again, you can see it spread. This is one of the coolest parts about watercolor paper, because wherever the water is, you can actually make it move. So you can see how it's bleeding down here because it has water in it. But if you went to a spot that was dry, like for example over here, there won't be any bleeding because there's nothing over there to move to. So you just put this in. You can that's the cool part about it. If you tape this to a board, you can move it. And then you can get these other little spots. So I'm going to have to do another card. And it won't be with the watercolor pencils, but we'll do it with ink. And then you can move your pigment around, which is another really cool way to make a nice background. So there's that. I want to show you one other thing though before I'm done. Let me just clean this out. Always want to make sure when you're finished using your water painters or whatever it is we're calling them nowadays, that you clean the tip out so you can reuse it. And the water in here will dry eventually. So if you're storing this flat, you shouldn't have any problem. You can also do that with alcohol, which will make it dry even faster. But once again, just with the heat tool, if you take this now and you heat it, so I'm going to turn this on, and you can actually move the water. You can see it's kind of like when the wind blows the water on a lake or at the beach. So you can move the water around. But then you'll get a drip when it finally dries of concentrated color. Try not to burn my fingers. And you can tell because the wetness and the shine will go away. So then you have just a little kind of like an ethereal blob. So just to show you one more little thing, in case you wanted to, like, I don't know, send a little, just say it was like a tiny thank you note, and then, or like a bookmark or something. So I'll just grab that. And then the cool part is the black really stands out. So you could even use this. So let's just say, just for the heck of it, we're going to do a really little, just have a little tiny piece here. This is just me totally on the fly, whatever this is. I don't even know what size this is. Let's see. Oops. 6. So if I score this at 3. Is that 6? Nope, that was bigger than 6, Rach. What are you doing? That's okay. We'll cut it to 6. So we have a little 6 by 6. And take this, and we'll do this. I'm gonna make sure I wasn't too far over. Okay, so we'll give that a minute. Just Gonna hold. Whew, I shouldn't put my hand on that because I always forget that that ink takes so much longer to dry. It might have dried a little faster since I just heat set it and it was kind of hot. All right, so then there's that. We'll just flip it. Snip that off. And there, look, you have a little, I mean, that was super quick. That's probably the best card I made tonight, right? So just a little quick thank you card. But anyway, that is the difference too between if you want to use the inks. And it's just a really, I mean, that was just totally on a little scrappy blob of paper of what you can do with the aqua painters, or what are these called? What are they called? Anybody know? Who knows what they're called? I can't think what they're called off the top of my head. But it is kind of fun for backgrounds. It's other ways that you can use stuff that you probably already have. Do you wash those rags that you clean off in a washing machine? Yes. No, I never have had an issue with them, but I do always wash them separately. But if I'm really being honest, like I said when I did this, I don't wash them very often because I have a whole bunch of different ones, but I've never had any issues with them bleeding because the colors are water-based. I've never had a problem with them bleeding and then bleeding onto other clothes. Probably if you did black, but again, total 100% honesty, I don't wash them that often. I probably should wash them more often because then I wouldn't have a problem with them quite as much. But water painters, I don't know. They used to be called aqua painters. I don't know. They changed the names of stuff so many times. Sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to, let me just scroll through really quickly just to make sure I didn't miss any comments. I know I have a lot of things saying this person was watching. Has anybody used photo printer paper to watercolor on? That's a good question. You know, Char, as a matter of fact, now that you mention that, I was using, a couple times I used the photo paper as a kind of a replacement for glossy cardstock when we had it, and it never held up as well. So that's a good question, but I don't know the answer to that. So if somebody else may have an answer, feel free to write in an answer in and let her know about that. Oh, Marlene, that makes me happy. You know, here's the thing with trying stuff. In honesty, sometimes I love what I did. This was so much better in my head than how it turned out, but I still will send it because at least I'll send my friend a card. But this trunk thing just got out of control. I don't really like it. I should have just stuck with the skinny trunk and called it a day or trimmed it off or something. This one I think turned out pretty, but quite honestly, I love this one. And it's just a little tiny scrap thank you card that looks really cute. But I'm glad if you at least have the courage to try something. That makes me happy because things usually turn out to be amazing. That's really nice of you to say, Karen. Thank you for that so much. I really appreciate that. And I thank you all for joining me, for stopping in late. Thank you all for the comments, for the shares, and everything else. VersaFine Black, isn't it amazing? I wish we carried this. It's such a great ink. Again, it's great for fine details. It's also really easy to smudge because it does not dry fast, which also makes it great for embossing. But gosh, I wish we carry this. We don't. It's the same maker though as I think it's Tsukinko, maybe it is. But Memento, they also make they make Stays On, and they also make the Versamark. So, but again, you can't buy this from Stampin' Up. I bought this from, I don't know, some other place, probably Amazon or some other place that I'm not supposed to talk about. So I won't talk about it so I don't get in trouble. Oh, thanks, Kay. No worries. And I hope you guys had at least a few new ideas. I will see you again on Thursday. I will try to be on time as long as everything doesn't go wrong like it did today. So I will try to be, usually I've been trying to shoot for like 5:15. But on Thursday, I'll actually be on YouTube since I was on Facebook today. So if you don't already follow me over there, you can find me at Rachthestamper on YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, pretty much anything. If you're new here, thank you for coming. And if you are looking for my blog, I try to post all of the photos within 48 hours to my blog, which is rachthestamper.com. If you'd like to get any of these supplies, you can hit my online store, rachthestamper.stampinup.net, or if you go to my blog, there's also a button that says shop now that'll take you over there directly. So I thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you had a wonderful day. Hopefully your day went a teeny bit better than mine, but it's better now. Had a little crafting, and sometimes crafting therapy is what we need. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'll see you again on Thursday. Hope you have a great week until then. Talk to you soon.